All right, welcome into episode 8 of Taking the Field with Stevie Mack here on a Saturday edition of the podcast leading up to the Michigan-Ohio State game at noon. So there's a couple of things I want to get to today real quick, both regarding Michigan athletics. The first is going to be talking about this Michigan-Ohio State game coming up here in just about an hour from now, and kind of what I want to see from that game, kind of my expectations and how really Michigan can win this game today against the Buckeyes. And then the second thing is I have an apology to make to somebody on the Michigan basketball team from comments that I made back in the spring earlier this year. But the first thing I want to get to is this Michigan-Ohio State game and really ask the question, what is it going to take for Michigan to finally beat the Buckeyes? And I don't really know what to say about this game really anymore. I mean, from both sides of the rivalry, you know what this game is and what it means, especially to its fan base, and that's it. I mean, it goes deeper than the game itself, really. I mean, I hate to say it, but throw out the record books and throw out the stats because they don't matter in this game. They really don't. I mean, go back and look at the game last year when Michigan got throttled 62-39 or whatever it was. Go back and look at the stats from both teams going into that game. Michigan was, I believe, equal or better in almost every major statistical category to the Buckeyes going into that game last season, and still looked like they didn't belong on the same field as Ohio State. But here's what I want to see from Michigan today. Just go out there and play like you have nothing to lose. Just play loose and have fun and play like your hair's on fire. You know, just go crazy. Just give it everything you got on every single play, because you can't really lose anything by losing this game. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You lose again for like the 8th straight time? So what? You've lost the past 7 since 2011. I mean, this game could make your entire season, because you're not going to win the Big Ten, and you probably won't go to the Rose Bowl, even if you win this game. But the thing that you can hang your hat on this season is that you would have gone 3-0 against your rivals, and even if you lose, you can still say you finished with a winning record versus your rivals for the first time ever under Jim Harbaugh. But this team has come such a long way since getting smoked by Wisconsin and then the offense not showing up in the first half against Penn State. And then Jim Harbaugh said that the second half of that Penn State game would be Michigan's finest hour. And I think that if they were to win today, he would be absolutely right, because their entire season would have done a complete 180 from that second half, from where it was to where it's been, or to where it's gone, I should say. But I don't even know if any of that will even be enough today. But I will say this, that Don Brown has been prepping for this game and prepping for Ohio State's offense and what they want to do. Obviously, everybody knows about those crossing routes that killed Michigan's defense last year. He's been planning for this stuff, it seems like, all year. And really, from the team as a whole, this feels like the first time in as long as I can remember where Michigan has actually seemingly been planning for the Buckeyes all season, and not just in the week leading up to the actual game itself. And, you know, you hear all the time in the past years about how the Buckeyes say, oh yeah, it's a 365 day a year, 24/7, whatever deal with planning for Michigan. Like, we've always got Michigan on our mind. We're always looking towards that game and getting ready for that game. Like, everything we do is about that game. And you've never really kind of gotten that same feeling from the Michigan team. And I think that this is one of those years where you're kind of seeing that a little bit in the way that they've prepped for some of these other teams, and just kind of the things that they've implemented into their schemes that kind of seems like that they've been planning for this all along. And they've installed some things into their defense that I think will help them a lot today. We've seen them throw in a lot of zone this year, a lot of different zone looks, and they've also used a man-to-man defense where they utilize 3 deep safeties in the defense, guys like Metellus Hawkins and then Dax Hill being the third. And I think that it's these kind of things that can really cause some confusion for Justin Fields in this Ohio State offense, because out of these looks, they still like to blitz out of them like Don Brown's known for doing, and they like to bring that pressure from the edges and kind of collapse the pocket from outside in on the quarterback. And I think that if you can get some pressure in Justin Fields' face, you can possibly force him into making some mistakes. But I think even more than this, your offense still needs to be able to score with Ohio State, because let's face it, you're not going to completely shut them down. Although 2 years ago in the first quarter you did, when they had, I believe, -5 yards of total offense in the first quarter, which was absolutely mind-blowing. But anyway, but yeah, you're not going to stop them. You might be able to slow them down a little bit, but your offense still needs to be able to score with them. And I think the last 2 weeks against Michigan State and Indiana, we've kind of seen the offensive formula that can beat the Buckeyes, or at the very least, help Michigan score with them. And the way they've done that is simply by putting the ball in your senior quarterback's hands and just letting him go out there for 4 quarters and ball out to the tune of 25 completions, 300 or more yards, and 4 or 5 touchdowns. I mean, the guy set passing records for a single game against Michigan State in Michigan history. He passed Tom Brady for the most passing yards in a single game against them. So I think for me, and you know what, we know what this offense is and what they want their identity to be. We know that they want the offense to be tailored each week specifically to that opponent and the weaknesses that they can attack. But really, you've seen the key the last couple weeks. I know you want to give the ball to Haskins and you want to give the ball to Charbonnet as much as possible, but give Shea Patterson a chance to just go out there and rip it today, because he's done it the last 2 weeks and he's shown that it can work, and it can work really well. And the other thing I wanted to get to, I mentioned I had an apology for somebody on the Michigan basketball team, and that would be Michigan basketball head coach Juwan Howard. I want to apologize to Juwan for not believing in his ability to be a head coach at this level of college basketball, considering he had never been a head coach before. And when they made the decision to hire him back in May, I didn't really like it. I thought that the move seemed kind of safe, and it seemed kind of like the Michigan move to make, going with the Michigan man. Like, nowhere else in the country will you find a school where it actually seems like they make it a prerequisite to be an alum of the school. I mean, like, think about it. Your football coach, your hockey coach, and now your men's basketball coach have all had previous ties to the school. You know, obviously Juwan and Jim Howard played at Michigan for their sports, and then Mel Pearson was a longtime assistant under Red Berenson, so all 3 of them have had former ties to the school. But Juwan has started his career at Michigan as a head coach about as well as I think he could have. You know, and the one knock against him going into this week was that the team hadn't really played anyone that significant in the early going. Then they go to the battle for Atlantis this week, and they roll in there and basically earn 3 decisive wins over Iowa State, North Carolina, and Gonzaga, the later 2 being against top 10 opponents at the time. And the thing that I loved when I really sat back and thought about the battle for Atlantis was that it was really their chance to prepare for games in an NCAA March Madness style situation, with having very little time to prepare for your next opponent, whether you won or lost, because you were going to be playing the next day. And they responded, I think, as well as they could have in that environment. And at times, it just looked flat out easy. I mean, at one point against North Carolina, you were up by 24 in the second half. 24. Obviously, they only won by, I believe, 11 or 12 or so. But 24, I mean, you can't understate that. Like, 24 points, that's a lot against a top 10, borderline top 5 team. What they did in Atlantis was just flat out impressive. John Teskey looks like he can be a dominant force inside, and quite frankly, could be one of the top big men in the Big Ten. David DeJulius looks like a legit backup point guard behind Xavier Simpson. And, DeJulius even said at the end of last season that one of the best things to ever happen to his game was facing Simpson every single day in practice last year as a freshman. And I think we're really kind of seeing the outcome of that work in his sophomore season. He had a stretch of 4 consecutive games where he had 10 or more points, 2 of which came during games in the Bahamas. It was the first 2. And then Eli Brooks has kind of shown us something against UNC when he tied his career high for 24 points. And I think that, Franz Wagner, he'll be good eventually once he gets more reps, but I think that at times the game looked a little fast for him in the Bahamas. I think that once he gets more reps, it'll kind of slow down, and he won't force things as much. He looked like when he went in for layups a couple times, it looked like he was really having to try to score and things like that. So I think once he gets more reps, he'll be way more comfortable. And I mean, what can I say? Isaiah Livers just looks like he could be one of the best wings in all the Big Ten this year. I mean, he just looks like he's on a completely other level than what he was last year. I mean, he's shooting 56% from the floor overall, 52% from three-point range, which is absolutely ridiculous. And he's averaging 17 points per game after averaging just under 17 per game in the Bahamas. He was named to the all-tournament team along with John Teskey, and Teskey was named MVP of the tournament as well. And for Michigan, I mean, you're 7-0, and Juwan Howard's still perfect in his career at Michigan. And I really like what he did on the coaching staff by keeping Sadi Washington, because he was one of Michigan's best recruiters, and he brought in Phil Martelli, who has, 2 decades of head coaching experience at St. Joe's, and this team just looks like they've completely bought into whatever Juwan and the other coaches are saying right now, and he kind of spoke on that after the battle for Atlantis the other day, and this team just seems like they're playing at a very high level, and they are absolutely fun to watch. I mean, as a Michigan fan, you couldn't watch those 3 games that they just played this week and not have totally just been jumping around and getting all excited and hyped up and everything by what you were watching, because it was fun basketball to watch. And I think he's also done a pretty solid job in recruiting so far. Juwan has. I mean, he got a big-time recruit in Isaiah Todd, and he's still in the running for a 4-star big man, Hunter Dickinson, out of DeMatha High School. So overall, I think that, like I said earlier, Juwan has started his career here about as good as he possibly could have to this point, and I actually feel bad that I ever actually doubted him, because he's come in here and just given it 110% with everything he's done. And you're seeing that come to fruition when Michigan plays on the floor. I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's Iowa State. I don't care if it's North Carolina. And, Cole Anthony, who apparently the ESPN guys the other day just loved as they were down 24 and getting absolutely run off the floor. But I don't care who it's been against. They've looked good, and this team is just very fun to watch. So I apologize to Juwan. because his team has just been so entertaining to watch, and I'm sorry that I ever doubted him. So that'll do it for episode 8 of Taking the Field. A quick reminder to like, comment, and share on the post, and check out past episodes of the podcast on my website, takingthefield.com. That's taking-the-field.com, or simply Google Taking the Field with Stevie Mack. You can also follow me on Twitter, where I talk a lot about sports at Stevie Mack Media, and I also have a Facebook page dedicated to the podcast at TTFW Stevie Mack. That'll do it for this episode of Taking the Field with Stevie Mack. Thanks for listening.